Hello there everybody, Sam's Trains here, welcome back to the railway and welcome to the next exciting chapter of my 3D printing adventure. In all seriousness, I think I'm addicted to 3D printing. Seriously, it is so much fun. Or rather, the designing of stuff to 3D print. As satisfying as it is to watch your creations come to life on the 3D printer, the fun part really is the design work, and of course that's the free part. You don't need a 3D printer to do that, and the design software is free to use. So if you're thinking about getting into sort of model design and that sort of thing, try SketchUp, just get designing and see if you like it, because it costs nothing but time and it is an awful lot of fun. Anyway, today I've decided I'm going to try to extend my rake a little bit. So you might have seen the two wagons I've produced already in a previous video. Those of course were the box van and the open wagon that I designed, and I made those so that they would fit onto this, my little standard chassis, which of course is a very, very basic chassis, but it has couplings, it has wheels, it rolls, so it does the job. So the next logical item of rolling stock to produce after you've done an open wagon and a box car is of course a tanker. So I came up with this design. Now it's a very, very basic tanker. There's not an awful lot of detail on it. To be honest, I wasn't entirely convinced whether the shape of the tank would work and whether those supports on the end would actually print properly. However, they did, and I already have a print of one. So here it is right now. This is my first 3D printed tanker. And you know what? It actually did come out all right, didn't it? You've got some really nice little details on there. This printer is still impressing me. It still amazes me what detail this printer can actually produce. And as I'm getting more used to it and as I'm improving the settings and such, it's actually getting better and better, which is surprising to me. As you can see, I have decided to paint the end supports just to make those stand out. Of course, they were white initially, and I'm no painter. I'm not very good at decoration, but yeah, it just sort of gives you some impression of what they should look like. You might notice something though, and that is that the model has these tensioned cables fitted to it. Now, you might be wondering how I produced those. Are they made of wire? Well, actually, no. They too are 3D printed. It's amazing how versatile these machines are. Seriously, it's impressing me. So I came up with this design. As you can see, this is the final design of them. They are single pieces, and as you can see, I've got big blocks at the ends of each section, and that's because I was finding that the very thin little cables were having trouble sticking to the plate of the 3D printer, and having those big blocks at either end provided a bit of an anchor, and therefore they print quite nicely, as you can see like this. I've got quite a lot of them because I wanted to do some more tankers. I'd like a little rake of my own. And as you can see, the vast majority of these have come out absolutely perfectly. And all you do is trim off the excess, and amazingly, this actually worked first time. The pieces just fit into the little holes I made in the tanker design without any problems whatsoever. And then of course you can just use a needle to apply a tiny little bit of glue to each piece and then trim off any parts that are sticking out. And hey presto, you've got separately fitted cables. So yeah, I'm really, really happy with the tanker. And of course I've got the orange one here as well, which has been printed with a different filament. I printed this one on a raft, and that actually made the ends come out even better, although the bottoms of those supports snapped off. So I will make a small change to the design to make those a little bit more rugged, but I'm sure the next print I do of one of these will be perfect. However, that is not the subject of this video, as you might have seen from the title. Today I want to create something new. I want to do something even more complicated than I've ever done before, because I need a challenge. So I've done my box van, I've done an open wagon, I've done a tanker. The only other thing that I can think of to make onto this chassis is a coach. Now, because of the size of the chassis, any coach I make for this will be ridiculously tiny. And you know what? That idea really does appeal to me. Imagine a really tiny pre-grouping coach, much smaller than the Hornby or the Hatton's Genesis coaches. That's just something that I would really, really love to own. So I've got a bit of a plan for this. This chassis is barely 60 millimeters long, right? It's very, very short. That should be around the right size to produce a 2-compartment coach that seats 12 people, 6 people in each coach, 3 people per bench. What is that going to look like? Can I design something like that? Have I learnt enough to actually pull that off? Well, I'm logging straight into the 3D software to find out. So the early coaches of the kind I'm hoping to design tend to be quite ornate, don't they? And that means lots of little details and other little bits and bobs that make them look nice. But that could pose a problem, because if I'm not very careful about the technique I choose to design this, it's going to take absolutely ages. So I've decided to make this coach a modular coach. It's going to be made up of separate parts which I can duplicate and then slot together in software to make a complete coach that will print as a single piece. So this is going to have a general base which sits at the very bottom, then each interior compartment is going to be separate, the ends are going to be separate pieces, the roof is going to be a separate and also a separately printed piece, the exterior compartment walls are going to be separate as well. Now this should mean that it will be quick because each piece will only have to be designed once. It also means that there's less room for error because I'm going to be duplicating these pieces. All of the details on each piece will be exactly the same, so there's no opportunity for me to get dimensions wrong. And also it will allow me to produce larger coaches in the future. If I want to produce a 4-compartment coach one day, having the individual pieces ready should allow me to do that quite easily. So the base I've made is at half width because I'm planning to give the interior section its own base as well, which should make the whole base a little bit thicker. And now, as you can see, I'm designing the first part of the first side. So this is going to be half of a wall, and I've pre-calculated my dimensions, so it's just a case of punching those in and getting the walls produced. Now, I've noticed that other coaches of this era sort of grow outwards from the base so that they have a little bit of an overhang as they get higher. So I have decided to replicate that little effect on mine. So there you have it. We have now the basic shape of the coach wall. And now I'm making another component. This is the end piece, which of course will be duplicated on both ends. So now that I have 2 pieces, one at each end, any edits I make to those parts will now be duplicated on both ends, which is really quite handy. Now it's a case of positioning the first 2 side walls, so I'm duplicating the first one I've produced, and I have realised that I need to adjust those end pieces to accommodate that overhang I've designed. So it's dead simple now just to change that up, and as you can see, everything fits nicely, which means I can move on. Now, because I've duplicated these parts, every edit I make to them will always be duplicated, so each compartment of this coach only needs to be designed once, so that should save a lot of time. So I'm starting off with the door. As you can see, I'm finding the centre of the wall piece here, and I do know the typical dimensions of doors of these sorts of coaches based on other coaches I've got. I've just done a quick measurement and just picked a figure based on an average of those. And with the door more or less in place, I can start designing the body side, and that includes the door frames. I do want the door frames to stand out a little bit so that you can actually see a door there on the final print. And I guess the next thing to do is to figure out how to design the rounded windows, because most of the stuff I've done so far has been square, but the windows on these coaches are nearly always rounded. So it is taking a bit of trial and error to get this right, but I think now that is the effect I'm looking for. So if I do that on the bottom 2, that looks pretty decent. So now that I know how to make windows, I need to decide where the main windows are going, not the ones on the doors. So I'm making these windows equidistant from the door on both sides, and as far as the curvature goes, it's just the same drill. And we're talking about 20 minutes of design work at this point, and it's already kind of recognisable as an old-timey coach, isn't it? So that just shows you that this technique of duplicating parts already is working, and it does save an awful lot of time. Now then, it's time to start on the decorative detailing. I want sort of curved imprints into the body because almost all early coaches had them, I've noticed, on the Hornby and the Hattons ones. So I'm putting those onto mine, and then I'm putting a larger version of that in the centre of the coach, but of course I just need to design half of it, as the other half will be automatically mirrored on the right hand side, which again is really handy. So now I've got most of the design work in place, I want to sort of take a step back and see how it's looking. So as you can see, I'm pushing the windows and the doors through, and also some of those decorative parts as well, just to see how it all looks together. And I'm pretty happy with that, but obviously there's still a bit more to do. So there's some detailing that needs to go on the upper part of the body, so that is the vents above the doors, again with rounded edges, and more decorative insets around the tops of the windows as well. More of the same below the windows and the doors too. I'm going super decorative on these because, you know, every little detail you put on there just stands out so beautifully when it's printed. And I also love how that long center inset looks, so I'm super happy with this technique. It's just working so well. And then of course there is a large insert at the bottom of the coach around the doors and the base of the windows, and I think that pretty much finishes off the bulk of the bodywork, and it's looking pretty good. So now it's time to add some extra details in. I've decided I'm going to just bodge on door handles and grab rails. Not entirely sure how well this is going to print, and I'm using lots of trial and error to design the sections, but it looks okay in software. How it's actually going to print, I'm not entirely sure. There's only one way to find out. And now I can duplicate that part, of course, for the rest of the doors. It can't become a part of the wall component because obviously if I duplicate and mirror it, then the handles will be on the wrong side of the doors, and I want them to be on the right hand side of the doors on both sides, so I do have to manually place those. But yeah, it seems to be absolutely fine. So before I duplicate the walls on the back side, I think it's time to start work on the interior. Now, as I said, I want my interior to sit on a base, which should make it easier to design, and I've intentionally made the main base a little bit thinner than it should be so that the interior floor won't be too high, even though it has its own base as well, if that makes sense. And as you can see, I did get the dimensions right because the parts fit perfectly onto the base there. So the first job is the dividing wall, which again needs to be designed at half width because it's being duplicated on the other side, so that looks pretty good. Next up, the seats. I've just done this by eye really. I've picked a dimension that looks good going by the height of the windows, and of course I've made sure to use the same measurements for both sides as well. Next job is the backrests on the seats. I'm just putting very, very small ones in there, not very much detail as well because these are inside the coach at this point, but hopefully that will give a good little illusion. And I am going to put in some armrests as well, just to divide up the seats really. So this is a 12-seater coach with 2 compartments with 2 seats in each, and each bench or seat is going to be divided into 3, which means I need 2 armrests per seat. So it's just a case of dividing it into 3 and putting the armrests in there. Again, I'm not using any specific measurements for this. I'm just going by eye to get it roughly right, and if it's wrong, I guess I can change it, but I think this is actually looking okay. So I now want to add a little bit more detail. I've started by putting in a table at the end of the compartment. I thought that would be a nice touch, but then I realised that that is where the door has to be, and you don't really want a table stuck on the inside of a door. It's not very realistic. It's not a corridor coach either, so you can't do that really, so it's got to go. Maybe I'll do that another day if I try to do a different coach. So I've settled for some basic luggage racks instead. Again, there's no opportunity really to put much detail into these. I guess I could go back and improve them later on, but they really are just shelves at the moment. So there you go, luggage racks in inverted commas. So now it's just a case of duplicating the walls on the other side, and we more or less have a complete body. So now all that remains is to add some detail to the ends. So I've gone with some very, very simple vertical planking, simple enough to produce obviously. Lamp irons as well, got to have some lamp irons. I've had a little bit of trouble getting these to look decent. I've ended up rounding the upper edges just to make it look a little bit better, but they are such small parts, and I know the printer can't do super detail. I mean, it does a good job, but tiny parts with little curves on them, yeah, it's not really going to do it. So I'm just trying to keep those simple as possible just to save me disappointment later down the line. But that's it. That's a finished body, and it's literally taken about an hour and a quarter to produce this. So quick, and I'm actually so pleased with that. Just have to wait and see how it prints now. So how quick was that? An hour and a quarter, no faffing about, and I'm really, really pleased with the way it looks. Now, I've got a slight confession to make. I actually did that last night. I did it last evening. It was so fast, it was just done in the evening. So I decided this morning to get up quite early. I came up here, you know, early hours, about 6:30, something like that. Stuck the 3D printer on, got it printing, because the print time estimate for this was upwards of 4 hours, and I actually want to show the thing in this video. So it's been at it for a few hours. The print is halfway through. Why don't we go over there, take a look and check in with it, see how it's coming along. Oh, Wow, look at the state of that. I mean, the last time I saw this was when the base was just about finished, before I started filming this video. We're now sort of, you know, a third of the way up the windows. Now it's saying there's the best part of 2 hours left to go on this, which means that truly this takes far longer to print than it actually took to design, which is amazing. But already I can see the details coming to life. The sides of the coaches look totally fine. The door handles and those assemblies, they look absolutely fine. The overhangs are looking great. They're just subtle enough to look alright, I think. The lamp irons on the ends, they seem to have been nicely formed. And as you can see, the interiors are looking just swell, aren't they? They're really alright. Not really seeing much definition in the backrests. I think I made those a little bit too subtle, maybe. So I could put some more detail into those, maybe. But who knows, who knows. We'll wait till it's finished before I make any final decisions. So that is really, really cool. I'll come back to you when the thing's finished, in around an hour and 3/4. Oh, it's finished. Man, let that cool off a little bit on the plate and then I'll pull it out of there. Oh my God. Oh my word. That is absolutely insane. It is both beautiful and ridiculous at the same time. I really don't know whether anything like this has ever existed, at least not in standard gauge. Having said that, I'm really getting narrow gauge vibes from this, even though everything isn't really to narrow gauge scale. Yeah, I am so pleased with that. All of the detail has come out beautifully. The interior is really nice and sharp. I'm loving that. The luggage racks look good. The exteriors are great. As you can see, we can now see a bit better the lamp irons, which actually look fine. So do the door handles, all very nice. And all the decorative fluff work I did on the outside of the body, that has all been beautifully formed. The tops of the windows are great. Wow. Body, that's a big tick. So the coach body is all well and good, but I need to finish it off with a roof. So let's jump back into the 3D design software and see what I can come up with. So the first job on the roof is to figure out how I'm going to make the thing fit. So I've actually raised the height of the walls by just 1mm, and the roof is actually going to sit on these extrusions, hopefully, and then with a dab of glue, the roof will fit properly, hopefully. So now I'm doing the base of the roof piece. It's just a few millimeters too wide and too long as well, because I want the roof to overhang the coach body by just a few millimeters, because I think that looks nice and no other reason. Now the tricky part is to design the indent into the base. If I get this wrong, then the roof will not fit. So I am privately going to remeasure all of this before I print it, just to make sure it stands a good chance of actually fitting once I print it. And it is going to be a very, very simple roof. I've got this shallow arc going across the top. It's just a case of dragging that along. It looks all right, I think. And I've decided to go with some oil-based roof furniture, so oil lighting, and I am going to put a little bit of extra detail on here, as this is the very top of the model, so you will be looking down on it, and also because this is the very top, it won't ruin the build if something goes wrong because I've gone too fine on the details. So yeah, I've put in a fair bit of detail onto those, and if you stand back, yeah, looks all right. And that's it, the complete roof. So I have a complete roof, not entirely convinced whether it's going to fit. All the measurements sort of add up and make sense, but is it actually going to work in practice? Let's get it printing and let's find out. So I actually want to do the roof in a different colour. I've got a nice grey plastic, which I'm hoping will help it to stand out just a little bit. But there's a problem with the grey, because I could only get it in a huge spool like this, and if I'm not much mistaken, I don't think that will fit inside the printer. So I've had my printer create an extension for itself. I didn't design this piece, that was somebody else's work. But that means that I can now feed the larger spool onto the printer, I think. And with that, Mr. 3D printer, I would like the roof, please. the coach roof. Off you go. And this one's set to take a little bit longer. I'm expecting about an hour and a quarter for this one to print. So I'll see you in about 75 minutes. Well folks, I'm back and it looks like it has finished. Got to say, very impressed with the Amazon filament. Usually when I change and try a new colour for the first time, the first few builds always go wrong because the temperature's not right or anything. Well, this has just worked straight away first time, which is kind of unheard of so far for me. Wow. Oh, tell you what, it does a good job on those minute details. Look at the roof furniture, that stands out pretty good. Right folks, what do you reckon? Is the roof going to fit onto the body? Well, I hope so, because I've given plenty of space for the roof to fit, but you never know, do you? So, let's give it a try. Oh my God. How did how did that work so nicely first time? Well, it fits. Perhaps I could work on the fit at the ends a little bit, but oh my God. Wow, and does it fit onto the chassis? I've had more practice at this. Yeah, it does. Whoa. Well, my word. You know what? That is the first time I've actually designed something and every instance of it has just come out right. First time. I am such a fan of that. Wow. I should perhaps just run it around the track, should I? Put it on a chassis with wheels? I think it would be rude not to. So, there you have it folks. I made the decision to create a coach less than 24 hours ago, and now here it is on the layout. So that is some turnaround, isn't it? What a ridiculous little wagon, but already I'm quite pleased with that. So I feel like now I've kind of graduated, I've passed a point. I feel like within reason there is nothing I couldn't create with a bit of time and with that 3D printer. So if you've got any ideas of what I should do next, please do comment them down below. Maybe I should create a baggage car or a brake to go with my little coach and make a little rake of them. Maybe it's time to ditch my basic chassis and start a different chassis with more detail, which I can create even better bodies for. I really don't know. I feel like the sky is the limit, but today's project, it's been like a little 24-hour job. It's been so satisfying, so enjoyable, and the final result is pretty cool, if you ask me. So thank you so much for watching. Again, if you like the 3D printing videos, do let me know and I will try to do more. For now though, I think that's about all I've got to show, so I'll see you on the next one. Alright, take care folks. Cheers everybody.